Hey everyone! Before we dive into the episode today, I want to make sure you know that Mastery Group enrollment opens tomorrow. We open once a quarter to make sure everybody gets really prepped and ready to go prior to their first strategic planning retreat. If you're a law firm owner who's thirsty for figuring out exactly what you're aiming for and making a really well thought out, deliberate strategic plan to get there, and then having accountability and coaching along the way so that you can really honor your plans, then join us. We would love to have you. That means you are like-minded and you're probably willing to do the work. Many of you are fans of Monday Map, Friday Wrap, which is a process that we teach, and all members inside are expected to practice that. So if that's something that you would really like to up your game and get better with how you plan your time and honor your plan so that you create more freedom of time and money, then this is also a really great outlet for you to do that and work with me and alongside other law firm owners focused on the very same things. If this sounds interesting to you, wonderful. Head over to velocitywork.com/join, get the information and get yourself enrolled starting tomorrow. Welcome to the Law Firm Owner Podcast, powered by Velocity Work, for owners who want to grow a firm that gives them the life they want. Get crystal clear on where you're going, take planning seriously, and honor your plan like a pro. This is the work that creates velocity. All right, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode. I am so thrilled that Gordon VanderLeek is here with me today. Welcome, Gordon.
Hi, Melissa. How are you?
I'm great. It's so good to have you back on the show. It's been a really long time since you've been on the podcast.
Appreciate the invitation as always. But, I just got to say to start off with that every time I have a conversation with you, you're just so full of energy and you got a lovely smile that I can see. Our listeners can't for the podcast, but you bring a lot of energy to every conversation. I've seen that in Mastery Group and other interactions. So it's always a delight to have a conversation because you're picking me up and going to make me have a good day as a result.
Oh my gosh. Thank you. Well, I have to say too, and I'm not just saying this to offer compliment because I got a compliment, but something that feels really important to say about having worked with you. It's a joy to work with you because of how honest you are. That's the thing that comes to mind when the level of honesty that you have, which requires a bit of vulnerability in times, is the reason that you have leaps when you have leaps. And business is not just one giant leap forward. Like every business owner has their own set of trials and tribulations, but you've had your fair share in the last 18 months. Yeah. So, but you are definitely on, I would consider this, so I guess I shouldn't speak for you, but it seems like you're on the other side of those and your firm is starting to thrive in a way that it hasn't prior. And it's really, really cool to see.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. It's hard work. It reminds me of that. You see these memes going around social media about, the life of an entrepreneur, and people on the outside see, you have some success and you're profitable, but they think it's kind of a straight line. But the meme shows the zigzags and the ups and downs and the circling back and then the moving forward. And that really is the life of an entrepreneur. We're running our own businesses like many of our clients. And it's not always easy. Things kind of come out of left field. We had to navigate a pandemic and these are things that they don't teach you in law school, right? You just have to pivot from that. Before I forget on that, and I know we have some specific topics to cover today, what's interesting when I think back to those more turbulent times, right? Because we went through a section of time where I had associates, I was building the team up, and then associates left for various reasons. And I'm left with a different view of what my next number of years look like than what I had in my head and the team that was there. So that was hurtful or a hard thing to go through, because you take those things personally, even though it wasn't for personal reasons that they left or anything relating to the firm. It's just different opportunities, right? So, but it changed what the plan was. So we have all these plans and it can change. There was a period of time in there that I said, I just got to cut costs. I got to forget about all this stuff. I got to focus in. And should I just continue on with velocity work? And we can circle back to that later on. But quite frankly, when I looked at what are the essentials and I was stripping down to the essentials of, okay, what are our immediate goals? What do we have to get done? it resonated with me loud and clear is that I couldn't give up velocity work. So for me, velocity work was not only the acceleration and all the things, and we like to talk about all the successes, but because it was there, even though I wasn't able to participate at the same level, it was the constant through it all. And it was really a bit of, for me, a safety net, looking at it from a law firm owner's perspective. So for those listeners, if you're saying, hey, you need support, get that in place when times are good, because when times are not so good, you need a community, you need a place. And I think you bring that to the community, that people can be vulnerable. It's a safe place. You can talk to other people who've been through that. And Velocity Work and Mastery Group and the other programs that I've been involved with have always felt to be a safe place where I could say what I was feeling, even if it wasn't the most pleasant, because that sometimes happens, right? That we just, you get down about something, or it's just kind of a crappy quarter. You got around other people who've probably been through it. They're not judging, and you're there in support. And so that was hugely important to me in sort of getting through 2022, because the first half was kind of a bunch of crap.
It was brutal.
And it was pretty brutal. And then the second half really turned it around. We built up the team and I think reinvigorated.
And I think, tell me where I'm wrong, I always think in the back of my head when I say this, people are going to think, well, it's not just about that, Melissa, but it is something to be celebrated. You also, I think, hit your best year ever in 2022 in terms of revenue.
Yes, we did.
Which is
we
remarkable.
had a stellar year. It was a tough year, and there was a lot more I had to do hands-on, because a lot of stuff got dumped onto my plate as a result of some of these changes, and it got delegated back to me.
I just can't believe that, though. I mean, seriously, I'm just, with the hand that you were dealt early, like January 2022, which was some key people embarking on new opportunities. They're younger. There was some opportunity. So they, without a lot of notice, really stepped out. And the pressure that put on you, a lot of people wouldn't be able to keep the business floating the way that you guys did in order for that business to still be able to be tended to. And that's kind of what I mean. I don't like that you grinded booty off. That's not what I'm talking about. But it was hard, but I'm just shocked, because a lot of people, they would have seen a dip because it would have been different decisions. It would have been a different way of thinking, and they would have neglected the business that they could have had. And your firm didn't do that. I don't know. I'm just totally impressed by that. It's not about the revenue, and that's not the only thing that's about, but it just strikes me as crazy that was your best year ever, despite how hard. I mean, I think that challenge was harder for you than COVID.
It was. I would say that undoubtedly. COVID had its challenges, but it was almost like we had to rebuild, right? We had to start over again. I mean, we had some bedrock stuff, and we had systems and processes, which you had helped me work on over the years, right? So that helped us through that process. But in that circumstance, I think it was, definitely a success. We've celebrated that as a team when we've been reporting on our numbers and we're doing our analysis of the year, and there's lots of positives. So that really sets the stage, I think, for 2023. And secondly, I think for me, now I'm feeling like, okay, if another challenge came up, I can handle it. I got through it. But again, I look back and say, the money I spent at Velocity Work was the best money I ever spent to get me through 2022. Right.
Gosh.
So I wanted to say that, because it's, obviously we achieved these goals as a team. I give lots of credit to my team and hardworking. We brought on some really good, the absence of a good team around me really forced us to make some decisions. We brought somebody on who had an HR background to say, we need help in this area. I struggled through the first half of 2022, for the most part, without an assistant. Yeah. And we had to let people go. People didn't make it through probationary period. So it was kind of a cycle of interviewing, bringing somebody on who could manage me. We were able to bring on some good team members and get through some stuff in 2022. Obviously, the support of my wife, Annie, who's full-time in the firm, was critical. Other team members who kind of stuck through all that junk and had confidence in our vision, what we want to do, who we want to serve, and what we're all about. I think articulating that was all super important. And looking forward to 2023. And I know in prepping for this, we also talked about sabbaticals and the need for rest. But the other thing, it struck me, because I had to do some planning this year and I'm taking another sabbatical. But as a result of all the effort for 2022 and how hard we worked, I recognized we need a break. We need a rest. Yeah. And so that's scheduled in for the month of June. And we look forward to being able to share with the group some of the lessons learned from that, and just taking a step from it. But it feels like we can now step away because we have a good foundation. And that's something that was possible or is now possible because I think we have a good team, but that also affects some of the goals I have for Q2.
Yeah. Oh, that's so fantastic. Before we go any further, I should have you give a little bit of background about yourself. Can you just say who you are, where you are, and what you do?
Sure, we got into the good conversation and didn't do the intro at the front end, but yeah. I own a firm, VanderLeek Law. As a practicing lawyer, I've been doing this month for 35 years, going back to when I got called to the bar in 1988. Seems like quite a while ago. And much has changed. I reside in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And people know Calgary, if you're traveling to the city, often know it for the week of Stampede, where everybody turns into a cowboy for 10 days, celebrates the cowboy culture close to the Rocky Mountains. It's a very entrepreneurial city. People like their outdoors, and we are living in some of the best, I think, one of the best places in the world to live. And we have access to lots of fun things to do. Have two associate lawyers, and then my wife works full-time as a disability advocate within the firm. So we focus on estate planning, estate administration, and trust planning. And then we have a growing focus and specialization in planning for families that have children with long-term disabilities. So in the disability space, in our own journey, we have 5 adopted children, all of which who have some form of disability, 3 more long-term and more severe, that involve government assistance. So we've taken some of that knowledge we have as parents and we've tried to help other families that went through what we went through with more support and walking alongside of them. And that's, I think, increased our reach in the Alberta community in terms of helping families in that area, and something we're known for, and continue to build on that expertise in helping families in that area.
Yeah. You have a pretty unique, amazing practice. Every time I say this, you get humble and you tell me I'm probably wrong. But I hear from other Canadians who know of you because of the disability advocacy work specifically, and that you're the firm in Canada that does this work. And you're like, no, there's somebody else in Canada that does this work. But I'm like, well, everybody tells me when I mention your name, they're like, oh, Gordon VanderLeek. He's the guy, he's the guy for disability advocacy work. So anyway, I'm
I don't know if I think what's fair is we focus in that area. I think we do good work. And certainly I think we're one of the leading firms in Alberta, or maybe Western Canada, that does it. I think what's unique is we have a division of the firm called Disability Advocates that provides those support services in terms of families interacting with the government. That's unique, that I don't know any other law firm does.
Yeah.
So in that, I think is unique. Obviously, there's other lawyers that, across Canada that focus in this area. We're a generous country. Alberta is one of the most generous provinces in terms of supporting people with long-term disabilities, but it's a complicated system, and people need help to interact with the system. So we've designed kind of a division of the firm that my wife, who's not a lawyer, heads up, and she helps families get the supports that they need, because it's a bit of a entanglement of tests and rules and procedures and forms, which she has figured out. We had to do that for our kids, and we're trying to translate that and help other families through that. So it's meaningful work, and work we are passionate about, and we're going to continue to do. And it's for those reasons. When you ask, why are you doing it? Yes, the revenue is nice, but we're doing it for more reasons than the revenue, and we want the firm to continue. And that helped through some of the low points as well, when you have to check in with yourself about, why am I doing this? Because this is a lot of hard work.
Right.
And, might be easier to pump gas, but for a living. But
it's
fun. It's fun, and it's challenging, and it's our calling. It's what we're going to do, and we'll do till we can't do it anymore. So
yeah, very cool. Well, one more thing I thought I would say, it feels right along with what you were saying earlier about the ups and downs of being a business owner. And it's not just up and to the left, or this linear journey of success. And I realized I need to educate my team more about that, because I think they think, this is going somewhere that isn't to toot my horn, but this is going to sound like it for a second. They see, when they work closely with clients, they see them succeed in a way that they haven't succeeded before, because they're getting organized and they're being asked questions that they haven't been asked before. Tends to have positive impact on the business. But if you're around someone long enough, you're going to see their hard times, despite best efforts. And it's just, stuff happens, right? And recently there was a social media post put out that I was like, it just doesn't sit well with me. I don't usually approve some of that stuff, the captions. And there was a caption that went out recently that was basically about, working with us, make sure you're on track. And I don't remember the exact thing, but I just thought, that is too Pollyanna. Like, that's not true. We shouldn't act like that's true. I feel like we're better served to be thought of as a partner through all of it. And hopefully we can facilitate and get you more of the good that you're looking for. But regardless of how well you plan and how much integrity you have, there's still going to be the hard stuff that you didn't anticipate. And dealing with those barriers is just as important as anything else, and how you show up for those things. And so I was just thinking about what you're mentioning, and it is inevitable. And to act like, for any business out there, not just mine, for any business that does any sort of facilitation or consulting, to act like, well, if you work with us, those problems don't exist, is totally crazy, and you should run for the hills. Because business is nuts, and you're going to have ups and downs despite your best efforts and how hard you try, right? So,
and the reality is we're all human beings, and we're going to go through different phases. There's times you're going to be feeling down about your work, or frustrated with your work, or disillusioned. But I think, in the context that owning a law firm and being in that CEO role can be a lonely position. I think velocity work and the programs you offer give a sense of community and a safe place to have those conversations, because where else are you going to talk about those things? Because not every day is a good one, but it's a delight to be able to celebrate successes as well, and do the high fives and connect with other people, even in some of your in-person conferences. I've attended a number of those, and it feels less alone when you've got your firm, or even if as a solo lawyer, you've got a community, because otherwise it feels like it's all you, and it's very heavy. It can be heavy at times. And that's the reality of business, right? I mean, I've worked with enough entrepreneurs over my career. Earlier on, I did more corporate commercial business law. So you'd follow the journeys of your clients and the ups and downs. Maybe you hit a recession, or they go through a struggle. And for law firm owners, that's harder, right? And it's harder in your local community for you necessarily to show all that, because these are maybe also your competitors. Hopefully you have good relationships locally, but this is unique. And for me, felt like a safe place to be able to say, this is what I'm struggling with, and a wonderful place to say, here's success. And hopefully people are there along for the journey. And, you can build friendships out of that. And I think that's important to say, I guess, a value of velocity work that is not to be underestimated. Having gone through kind of a trough recently, if you will, I'm reminded of the fact that that's a very good thing for people to consider when they're evaluating joining your program, because I think we all know that there's ups and downs, right? So where do you want to experience that? Do you want to sort of struggle with that on your own or with your team, or do you want a safe community to do that? And I think you bring a very supportive approach to that, non-judgmental. And it's like, okay, that happens. Let's get through it. Right. And, it's the facts, not the feelings, right? Going through that. And I think based on some of the work we did, we had a good platform for doing that, which interestingly for us, we had just gone through the beginning portions of private client, right? So we had done all that analysis, and then it all changed. But when I look back at it, we had that bedrock and some of that work to do to build on moving forward with kind of the reconfigured team. And it allowed me to say, wait a minute, we were on a trajectory. I had a little detour, but I want to get back on that road, right? And I want to go back to those principles. So going through the program, I think I would have reacted and felt differently had I not been part of Velocity Work and I was sort of doing this on my own. Then it would have been, it would have felt differently, and I don't think for the better.
Yeah, I really appreciate you saying that, because I think it's important for people. There's listeners tuning into this, and I think it's important to understand the reality. There's people that come on the podcast and they talk about how amazing everything is going and how much everything has grown, and that is wonderful. But that is not going to be the constant story every day, every moment from here on. And I think just hearing what you sharing, there was a huge challenge in 2022. I mean, more than what we're talking about here. Like, there's some personal stuff also that you really had to show up for. And that, I think, is healthy for everyone to hear. Not only because I think it helps people understand that they aren't alone, if you have struggles, it doesn't mean anything is wrong. It's just a part of the journey of being an owner of a business. And you coming out on the other side and just having some perspective about all of it, I think it's really great for people to be able to hear, because that will be, if you're a listener and you haven't gone through a trial of some sort or like a struggle yet, you will. And, when you do, it's kind of nice to hear the realness of using you as an example, Gordon, and you are on the other side and you did work hard. You had a reason for it. And now here you are and you're on track to take a sabbatical, which I really want to talk about that too. I was supposed to have you on to deconstruct a rock, and here we are. Does it put a wrench in your progress if we don't deconstruct the rock right now?
No.
Okay, let's talk about the sabbatical. So this is not your first rodeo. You know how to deconstruct a rock. You were just kind enough to come on so we could kind of model one for everyone. And I'm still happy to do that so we can find a time for it. But will you share, you're going on a sabbatical, you said June. Usually it's July, right?
Well, the last one was July. So to take a step back, this will be the third sabbatical. So let me explain what I mean by sabbatical. I thought it's an interesting word because we think of that like a university professor takes 6 months or 12 months and they go off and do some research or do something different than teaching classes and stuff. I think it's a term that sort of comes from academia. But I like the word, and here's my definition of it. And it's very personal, but it's my way of distinguishing it from a vacation. Because the reality as an owner, when I go on vacation, I've been known to be by a campfire, with the iPhone forwarding messages and texting clients and stuff, and you're sneaking in work when you're on vacation. So my definition of sabbatical is I am off grid and no social media. So I'm not available for my team. I'm not available for my clients. I literally delete the work email from my phone, and I'm not looking at any of that. And I am off for 30 days. And now we've done that every 2 years. So my big audacious goal in the fall of 2018, because I kept hearing people do the sabbatical, and I was motivated, for those that follow Michael Hyatt. At the time, I was sort of consuming some of his products a little bit more, and he was talking about a sabbatical, had some podcasts on that. I said, well, why can't I do it? And he was actually, one of his podcasts was challenging people to say, well, you think you can't. Well, I can't walk away from my business. It's so, I'm the face of the business. I need to make money. I'm driving it. I can't afford to be away. So my challenge for 2019 was, could I design the systems to be able to take a month off and not check in with the team or have them contact me for an answer to a question or some direction? And so I did that, and it was wonderful. What's interesting is in the years that follow, when we reminisce with friends or reflect between us on highlights and moments, we always went back to that trip. And it's like, oh, wasn't this so great? Or we saw this. So we spent a month traveling to and coming back from Vancouver Island. So one of the largest islands along the coast in North America, and a lovely place to visit and explore. We have always wanted to do it. So we hooked up our trailer and we went off grid for the month of June. And it was wonderful. And it created great memories. So then we said, well, we should do this again. Why can't we do it? So we did it again in 2021. And then we said, okay, well, we seem to be on a pattern of every 2 years. So we said, well, can we do it in 2023? And that is what is coming up. So I think without, the specifics of my situation, I guess, prior to that, I had never taken a month off. The most was maybe 2.5, 3 weeks, but I'd never taken a month. And I thought that's an interesting challenge. And it was also interesting to be off social media. So I did not post anything on Instagram. I didn't check Facebook, but I just really wanted to just cut all that out and have a time of rest. And it was good. It was really, really good and needed. And the light bulb moment for me came in week 3. I remember where we were exactly. And I remember sitting in a lovely little campground, just a beautiful place we had discovered. And I looked at Annie, my wife, and said, I have never felt this amount of rest. And it just like literally in my body, it felt different. I'm very entrepreneurial. I think I'm a high achiever. I try to go and get stuff done. I'm goal oriented. That's why I work well within velocity work, because, I want to get things done. You're looking at numbers and setting up Airtables and doing all that stuff of growing your business. That very much is part of me. I'm a builder. I love building things as an entrepreneur. and I want to build this firm. I want to see it get better. I want me to get better as a lawyer each and every year. But I needed to take a step back, and I never felt that level of rest. And that clinched it for me of going, wow, this is really good. And we can't, and actually in 2019, from our historical data, was our best year ever. I think maybe the reality is I still got 11 months worth of work done in 12 because you work like crazy before and you work like crazy when you get back. But a couple things happened from that. Number one is what I had to do was a lot of work, and it took about 8 months of planning to really set up the systems. And it was the first time I intentionally focused because I had to, because it was like, OMG, if I don't do this, the firm might not succeed. There could be a major problem. Do my staff really know? Is it me just doing everything? I have to focus more on the systems. I had been doing a little bit of work on that bit, but I became very intentional about training and communicating to the staff. And here's the system. If this comes up, you do this. And so it was an excuse to really force the delegation and force the training and the empowerment of our team. And the reality is things came up. There was a couple of emergency type files, and guess what? They handled it. And I think we came back, and based on their feedback to me, I concluded that actually it bonded the team, because no longer it was, well, let's go to Gord and he's going to answer the question. They had to figure it out on their own. So they huddled, and a problem came in. There was an emergency application that was required, that came in, and they were either going to delegate it, like refer it to another law firm, or say, hey, we can do it. And they took the attitude of, we can do this. And it brought the team together because we were absent. So it was a good learning point of saying you can empower your team, because it's going to force you to be ready for being away for that month. But it also, you have to set the rules of, you can't call me to solve the problem, right? So, and they did it wonderfully. And it really coalesced the team, because like with anything, if we look in our lives, if you have, a serious problem in front of you and you work together as a team, it helps the team dynamics. It bonds people together, like just doing your own thing, right? You're putting on a big event. Just came off an event from Atlanta, right? I'm going to bet your team felt, hey, we did it. We bonded together, because it was a ton of work to pull that off and come together. And those are examples where we can empower our team sometimes when we step away. Whereas I think my default has always been, oh, I can't leave a firm that long. It's going to fall apart. Well, it ran just fine without me. That was a little humbling, but a good lesson out of that is that I had a good team and we did a good job of planning it. And it was possible. And it did not hurt me financially, because that's usually what you think about is, is there enough for payroll? Or are you going to, because you're the grinder, you're the one doing the billable hours and sending out the invoices, and your productivity is directly impacting cash flow. It's a serious concern to say, can I step away for a month, right? But it was freeing. So number one, we got some deep rest that I didn't experience before, which was rejuvenating. We still talk about that trip and some of the memories created. So it's just good for us as husband and wife to do that together and to be disconnected like that. And quite frankly, being a month off social media was good too. You tend to be reflective, and came away with some renewed energy and some thoughts. So yeah, the challenge will be, can we do that again? And what do we have to set up in the firm in order for that to be successful? And yeah, it creates that balance, right? It feels like, yes, we're working really hard, but we're not only working hard. It's a bit of a reward for working hard that, okay, I got a month off, and we're very much looking forward to it. Because I think what 2022 represented for the firm, we do need the rest. And it doesn't mean checking in or doing, taking your laptop and sitting on a beach and reviewing a document or giving direction, right? So stepping away from it forces the delegation, it forces the systems, it forces the training. But I've learned it to be certainly essential. And at this stage in our career, I don't want to be the person who, works till you drop dead of a heart attack in your office. That I've realized you need the balance. You need to look after yourself if you're in it for the long game. And the sabbaticals for us is, I think something we'll try to continue. And hopefully, yeah, it's good for the team as well, that they can feel like they're accomplishing something. They're helping us be on sabbatical, and that is good for team building.
People are probably listening to this on a spectrum thinking, that's impossible for me right now, or, I wonder if I should consider that. What would you say it takes for people to be able to plan this for themselves? And I'm thinking, like, how much time in advance, if it's their very first one, or maybe whether it's not, how much time in advance should this be planned? Because I think one of the points you're making is that You don't have to have your ducks as much in a row as what you think you do in order to be able to do this. However, there's probably some things that you would recommend people think through or do prior to doing this for themselves. I'm just curious what comes to mind.
I think that 8-9 months, maybe 8 to 10 months is not a bad thing to start the planning. If you're going to deconstruct this as a goal that you want to accomplish this, and at the time, I did have it as a goal, was to be able to have a successful sabbatical, right? So I try to work it backwards. It starts with just putting it on your calendar. I mean, it's not uncommon that I'm booking things, whether it's court dates or commitments for speaking or other family obligations. First, you probably need, like if we're doing something in the summer, it's something I'm planning in October or November the year prior.
Wow.
The menial task of getting it on your calendar and figuring out, yes, I'm going to be off, so don't book anything. And you can begin to communicate and you can announce that to the team. I think, the second point is the communication, right? You don't say, oh, by the way, next month I'm off for a month. That's, I think, unrealistic for every lawyer practicing because, you've got client commitments and all the rest of it. Your clients need to know you're gone. And I think hopefully they support you in that and organize their communication with you or the work they're delegating accordingly. You may need to have communications in the spring with other lawyers who could be on standby if you're solo, saying that person needs to be on board to support you. You don't do that 2 or 3 months ahead, right? Because those people would be already slammed with work and they wouldn't have capacity. And now you're feeling like you can't do it. So I would say, 8 to 10 months is a good time to start the thinking for that. And then you can ask yourself the question of financially, what is required? Because going away means you're probably spending money. So you got to save for that. But it helps the budgeting process or the cash flow analysis for the upcoming fiscal period if you're doing that on a calendar year or whatever. So there's a financial implication to being able to take away because you got to have enough money in the bank to pay for rent and do payroll. Those sort of basic things. You don't want your staff worrying about those or like, what's going to happen? Is the firm safe because they're taking time off? And I think you want to communicate why you're doing it. For us, it was about, okay, this is a way to regenerate and we're going to come back stronger, maybe some fresh ideas because we've had some time away from the business. And I think it's okay for the staff to know that you're investing in yourself. If you're the engine of the firm, the engine needs a tune-up every now and then. It needs some attention from the mechanic, right? And that for us was the sabbatical, was getting the rest we need so we're coming back reinvigorated and stronger and we're doing better work for our clients. But we're able to articulate those reasons and get the buy-in from our staff. Again, you don't do that like with 3 months ahead. It feels, I think you want to communicate this is planned. And quite frankly, you may need to communicate with your clients. And in the spring, you may not take on certain assignments or you can adjust accordingly. So I think it does make a difference if you have a team or you don't have a team. And for our sabbaticals, we've had the luxury of having other team members. I've had associates who are, well trained and able to handle the work in my absence. But you got to do mechanical things like, well, who's signing authority on the trust account? You got to have a meeting with the bank to change the signing authority so trust checks can be written. Those practical considerations, those are the things I think it requires that kind of planning. And quite frankly, it's fun to plan the time away. And there's that for all of us with holidays, right? A lot of the enjoyment is the planning and the anticipation of it. And the endorphins go because you're excited about that time off and you can look forward to it. So it energizes you to say, hey, I can work hard now because I know there's a break coming up. So I think it adds to your productivity, quite frankly, to schedule time away.
So this is so interesting. Actually, one of the things I think I'm going to add into strategic planning is, or thinking forward and thinking about your vision. I do think I'm going to have everybody write down one thing and calendar one thing that creates anticipation because I don't think people do that enough. This is a really good example of what that looks like, but I wonder what people would come up with. But it does help when you have anticipation around something you're really looking forward to. It helps keep engagement high.
If you're thinking about procrastinating or you're thinking about, well, I'm going to put this off, it's like, well, you can't, right?
Right.
And that's where if you kind of figure it out on a timeline, I need to do this. I think it has to be purposeful and it has to be planned. And it also allows you to be able to plan a trip selfishly that, you can do more. You have more opportunities when you say, where can I go in the world for which I have 4 weeks?
Right.
Well, now you can start saying, well, maybe I can go to New Zealand or I could do that big trip that I didn't otherwise, I don't feel I have time for, right? So And that probably involves some expenses. So you have to manage those as well, because you might be drawing more from the business to pay for those. But again, it sort of keeps you engaged and focused. And then you can set goals of, well, I need to have this in the bank, so I'm going to defer maybe a certain expenditure or invest in the systems, develop your standard operating procedures, do all of those things that we should be doing anyway. For me, the sabbatical forced it. And there was a nice benefit, and the rest was just so invigorating and welcoming at the time, and still is, right? That it's a way of taking care of yourself.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. And it's just planning how you're going to get the project done. This is much bigger because it's 8 to 9 months out, and there's so many things that need to happen. And that list of things, many of them might be rocks, like creating new standard operating procedures for a certain department.
But I remember at the time I had to do that, right? It forced me to think, how much is in my own head?
Yeah.
And what do I need to write down? So now, could that have happened without a sabbatical? Absolutely. Lots of people do that. But
it doesn't happen as easily.
The issue, right? And it was very useful for that, because I kept hearing, and that was one of the reasons for joining Velocity Work, right? Is to say, no, I need to get better systems. I need the firm to run better on its own without my involvement. And a good test for that was stepping away from the business, right? So it created a bunch of fear. And there was times I said, what am I doing? This is craziness. But we did it, right? And had I not declared it and planned for it, it wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
Like with most things. So I think for all those reasons, it's really important to take a step away. And everybody's going to be in a different situation. And quite frankly, maybe even 10 years ago, I wouldn't have been in a position for this. But thankfully we said, okay, the business is healthy enough that it can do this. And as it turned out, I was probably more productive, because it forced me to, you can't procrastinate on it. Well,
yeah.
You booked it off, and it's on the calendar, and this has to happen. And so it's much like declaring a goal and then holding yourself accountable for that. It avoids the procrastination.
And people could start, if you said 10 years ago, maybe I couldn't have pulled this off, but maybe you could have done 1 week, which would be a huge deal for a lot of people that can't even wrap their heads around being out for a solid week off the grid. Not off the grid, but just not reachable.
Yeah. And just needing that time to reflect. And as the business grew, it had new problems. And I thought the reality is we still think about our business even when you're away, but you have that time to think. And I had been reading a bunch of books on rest, and the science behind it is clear. I think that you just can't go. And, you need to take pause. I think that's part of our normal cycle. And we need to be doing that on a regular basis, and especially as law firm owners.
Well, I hope that people are inspired by this, because I do think that's something that can help, just like you said, force function, all the things that they know that they want to do, but it's just been tough to get it done, where if they put something in a place like this, it would help kind of make it more urgent to get done, or go up the list of priority.
Certainly in going through Mastery Group, or you're going through the retreats, okay, where do you want to accomplish? What are your goals? And then working that backwards, right, through your methodology. That created a framework in which I could even think this was a possibility in the initial stages. And now it's like we enjoy it. I think it's healthy for the team. It's healthy for us to be away from that, and is definitely doable. And I wouldn't have said that 10 years ago. I said, no, I can't be away from the business that long.
One other thing it feels like it would be worth sharing with people is that I don't know how religious you are about doing these, but you do take personal retreats as well. They're like a weekend long, sometimes 3 days, I think. And it's like once a quarter. Is that right?
Yeah. What's interesting is I was in that rhythm, I think 2020, 2021, that got blown out of the water in 2022 because of the circumstances, right? It was like, okay, all hands on deck. And I probably should have, but I didn't. That got scrapped, and I missed it. I'm experimenting this year with at least taking 1 day a month off. But I do want to go back to doing the retreats. And for me, the personal retreat, I dubbed it a silent retreat, because I would go away by myself, kind of cabin in the woods sort of environment. And I would just stop. I would just be away. For me, it was about listening to my thoughts, discerning where I should be going, thinking about problems. Again, not being on social media. But in addition to that, just being absolutely quiet and being still. For a period of time, I introduced fasting as part of that. It was sort of an interesting add-on once I started doing it. But a lot of it was, okay, my analysis of where has the firm been? Where is it going? And doing some planning for the quarter ahead. So I use it as goal setting and reflection. How am I doing as a person? Where are my personal goals? What do I want to do? So it allowed me to think ahead and put stuff in the calendar and set some goals and do some self-evaluation. How am I doing as a dad? How am I as a team leader? Am I pursuing the hobbies I want to? Am I making time for that? Am I building friendships? So I would highly encourage some period of time to set aside for that. And for me, it was a weekend. So I would take off on a maybe Friday morning and then come back on a Sunday afternoon and just be away, right? And be silent. And I think just being able to collect your thoughts, journal, reflect was very healthy. So I'm doing that, I need to get back on that. But the joke around the office would be, the next team meeting after Gord goes on a personal retreat, there's a PowerPoint, because I've got all sorts of ideas that percolate. So it was like this fear and trepidation. Gord goes away on a retreat and comes back with, well, we need to do this and implement this idea. But the reality is, as law firm owners, we need to step away from it to have that. There's just the grind of every day and meeting deadlines and getting your billings out and reconciling the bank account and keeping the team happy and dealing with HR issues and keeping our regulatory bodies happy, like all that stuff, our clients happy, doing the promotion, all the social media stuff. Sometimes you just need a break from it to think. And so the sabbatical was obviously a longer version of that, but that was more based on personal, okay, we need to just take time. And certainly in our firm, the unique aspect is I work full-time with my wife. So it was also nice for us to get away and not be talking about the business all the time and just something for the two of us, because we're the leaders within the firm. And
you mean on the sabbatical, not on the
sabbatical? Yeah. On the personal was just myself.
Yeah.
So that was one thing I introduced, to just have a little mini break and collect my thoughts.
I don't remember anything specifically, but I remember a couple times you coming back from those, and there was like an insight you would share that I thought, whoa, you don't get to that driving down the road to go pick up your kids. Like you needed space to get to some of the stuff that you got to. And it was so cool to hear, really inspiring. It's like, okay, yeah. I
remember that one in particular. And I even remember where I had that moment. It came to me, just a phrase to encapsulate how I was going to think about the quarter coming up, right? Which was, I am the problem and I am the solution.
Yes, that was one of them. Yes.
Yes. And I still remember you had your reaction to that, but it came to me on that weekend because I was struggling with, well, what about this? And what about this? And realizing I'm the source of the problem. I'm hanging on to things. I'm not delegating.
Your schedule. You have no room to even think in your schedule, and it's not all in your calendar. So it's like this impossible task that you're constantly up against with how much you're supposed to do. The number of files that you were on, and we would talk about that. We would work through that with Monday Map and delegation, and we would talk through it. But there had to be a moment for where I come from, you say coming to Jesus of some sort for oneself. And you had that, like where you are the problem and you are the solution. It's like, I don't know. It was really powerful when you shared it. Yeah.
That wouldn't have happened unless you go away and just, you have that thought hits you going, okay, that became the theme for that quarter. Yeah. All right. Identify those things where I am the problem. I can control that. How can I be the solution, and what can we implement for that? And can I create a rock about that to maybe move the needle a little bit? So it wouldn't have happened had you not had time to reflect, because our work is so time consuming, right? Mm-hmm. And mentally challenging in the practice of law, that I think you need time to reflect on your business. And I sort of coordinated the personal retreats with each quarter, and it was something you could look forward to, right? That again, it was a bit of a break. And obviously I was able to do that because I had a supportive wife who would let me, could sort of keep the home front nailed down while I was away. And that's important as we manage these businesses, to take time to reflect on your goals and what you're going to do and create those personal challenges.
Yeah. Yeah. So good, man. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
It's always fun to have a conversation. And what happens all the time, and it happened again today, is we start with something in mind and we end up going in different places. But it's always a delight to have these types of conversations with you, Melissa. And I look forward to having the next one where we can talk about that or whatever else we wish to talk about, I suppose.
Yeah. Thanks for hanging and going with the flow.
I guess thanks for doing what you do. I know others have said that to you, but I do remember listening to the podcast, a recent podcast that you put on about your journey and your story of, moving from the consulting work to the work you're doing now and taking that leap of faith. So I'm glad you had that walk in the woods or the come to Jesus moment, like that revelation, because that happened to you too, right? In reality, if I understood your discussion, you sort of come to that realization. And I know you've shared there's times where, okay, you go to a favorite park in Denver and journal and just get your thoughts out and be by yourself and away from kid obligations and family obligations and work obligations. So I think that's the point, maybe a bit of the theme of today is, take those times. Good stuff comes from it. You don't always have to be super productive. For me, it was always the difficulty with taking these times away. It felt selfish. Oh, I'm just doing this for myself, or I'm not billing, I got lots of work to do. Why am I doing this? But I lots of good comes from it and just getting a break. And sometimes you do that bigger thinking, the larger planning, like, should I start velocity work? Right. There was a moment you have to be with your thoughts and you have to be quiet in that moment and say, okay, all right, you make the decision and let's go. Right?
Yeah. That's so true. It is hard to take it for yourself. But to your point earlier, when you're saying the first thing is to get it on the calendar. If you get it on the calendar and you communicate, it helps it be more successful, that you'll do it. And always good comes out of it. Always. Yeah. And it may not always be profound light bulb moments, but it's just space that every human should have or can have when they do take it. It's a different pace for your mind and you could process. I think that's the thing for me, at least. There's a lot of processing when I have space to do that. Otherwise, you're just running. It kind of feels like the computer gets gummed up.
It's similar to coming to one of your conferences, right? And I just came off Atlanta and it was nice. Okay, I could get out of town and I'm going to a completely different city on the other side of, the continent. And it was time to get away and think about the business. So that was in a structured environment. So seize those opportunities where you can get out of your routine. Hopefully you have the support to be able to do that. But we need to think and reflect on our business. And that's going to influence our goals and where we're going. And you just need to create the space for that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Wow. Thank you, Gordon.
It's always great to chat.
You too. See you again soon. Hey, you may not know this, but there's a free guide for a process I teach called Monday Map, Friday Wrap. If you go to velocitywork.com, it's all yours. It's about how to plan your time and honor your plans so that week over week, more work that moves the needle is getting done in less time. Go to velocitywork.com to get your free copy. Thank you for listening to the Law Firm Owner Podcast. If you're ready to get clearer on your vision, data, and mindset, then head over to velocitywork.com where you can plug in to quarterly strategic planning with accountability and coaching in between. This is the work that creates velocity.